Hi, 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 and hey, hey, and welcome back to a Beatles talk show podcast, which is called Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. We, most of the time, do a show every 2 weeks. And the topic here is always on the solo Beatles, although once in a while we do cover the Beatles as a group. We always welcome special guests to our show, and we certainly have two of them on our show this time out. I'm Ken Michaels. I'm one of the four regular co-hosts of this show. You might know my syndicated Beatles radio show called Every Little Thing, another talk show podcast called Things We Said Today, and my own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio. And I'm being joined by my three regulars here. First of all, she is the queen of Beatles social media. She is the author of Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours through the Beatles' lesser known tracks. Also, Michael Jackson FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop.
Wow.
And after you read that book, there's nothing left to know about Michael Jackson. Also, Fandom in the Beatles, which she collaborated on with our colleague Ken Womack. And she also is the co-host of another Beatles podcast. Our co-hosts don't sit still at all. We're all busy with so many other shows. And she co-hosts a program called Toppermost of the Poppermost. Welcome, Kid O'Toole.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, everybody. This is going to be a very special show today. I'm so excited.
Yep. And we also have one of the co-hosts of another podcast called Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. Very ironic that this is the first time this has ever happened. Tom already knows what I'm going to say. We have,
Go for
we have the co-host of Two
it.
Legs, and one
Yes.
of our guests played on a song called Three Legs.
Oh, three legs.
That has
Yes.
never happened before.
Wow.
Along with Eddie Nichols, he co-hosts Two Legs and always putting out exciting content. Tom and Yachty.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, Kit. Hello, Joe. Hello, special guest. This is quite an honor, and I can't tell you how excited I have been to have the opportunity to talk to you two. And this, I can look. Let's get it going. Let's go.
Okay. And also, of course, we have Joe Mayo. He hosts his own YouTube channel, Mean Mr. Mayo, where he does a lot of programs on the Beatles, reviews movies, you name it, anything in the entertainment field. He covers a lot of ground. And it's always a great thrill to have him on the show, Joe Mayo.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, Kit and Tom. And it's a real pleasure of mine to be able to meet our guests, David and Ken. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. And I should mention that on the show this time, unlike all the other shows where we have news at the beginning, we're going to save it towards the end because we just want to get digging in deep with our two guests. And as you know, not that long ago, this little baby was dropped, the Mind Games archival box set. And I had the chance to meet these two gentlemen for the first time in quite a while. And back in the 80s, when I did my Beatles program on WDHA in New Jersey, I interviewed the two of them. And one of them was one of my first major interviews. And I know that between the two of them, they said to me, Ken, you know, maybe every 35 years we should do an interview. So I wanted them to live up to their promise. Well, David Spinozza and Ken Ascher, who both played on Mind Games, welcome to our show.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We're going to talk about some other work that the two of them have done. But just so everyone knows, in addition to playing on the Mind Games album, David played on the Ram album, and he also played on Ringo the Fourth. Maybe we'll get to chat a little bit about that album. Ken Ascher has also played on John's albums, Walls and Bridges and Rock and Roll. So, you know, 3 John Lennon albums that we all cherish. And so hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit about the other work there on the show. But I just want to start by bringing up the fact that before you guys worked on Mind Games, you actually worked on Yoko's album, Feeling the Space. And we had a guest on our show, a great author, Chip Manninger, who told us that the reason why you guys were chosen for Yoko's album was because Jim Keltner chose you. Is that true? That he picked the musicians on Feeling the Space?
You know what? I have no idea. I really
don't know.
I've never heard that actually, and I don't know.
Do you know how you were chosen at all?
I think I've told this story before, but I remember getting a phone call. I was living in the city at the time, and I got a phone call from Yoko, and and on my machine, I came home one day after playing sessions, and one day I just heard, "Hi, this is Yoko Ono, Yoko," and she spelled her name, which I thought was very interesting because, right? And she said, "I would like to hire you for a record. Please call me back." That's all I remember. I didn't know who Jim Keltner was. I didn't know
Wow.
I didn't. That's my remember. I'm not saying it's true, but that's my memory of what happened. I didn't know Jim Keltner from a hole in the wall back then.
My,
Hmm.
my, my only memory of it was that David called me and said that there was this possibility of recording with Yoko, that Jim was coming in from California, um, and um, and it just happened. I mean, I don't remember the details of too much besides David calling me one day and saying we're supposed to go to the record plant and record Yoko. And as I recall, there may have been, or we may have started a second album with Yoko, which I don't know if that ever came out, or because Feeling the Space, I think, was the one with the pyramid on the cover or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
No,
And
we started a second one that she asked me to produce, and I was producing the second one. And then I don't remember what happened. I think her and I had a falling out. It was something. We just sort of, and all of a sudden I went this way, she went that way, and I don't know what happened. It just sort of it just sort of died on the vine.
Okay.
Was that the one? Was I remember with the song "It Happened"?
Yes, that's right. It happened was on that record, but I didn't know if it ever came out. I wasn't even sure what happened because honestly, when I did recordings, I really didn't go back and listen, or even I was on to the next thing. I never was a person that could go and listen to myself play, especially like a month after it happened. Like maybe 20 years later, I could go and go, "Hey, that's not bad." But
Yeah.
Mm.
when I was working on stuff, I really couldn't. I never went home and listened to it. That was enough for me personally.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask the two of you because what I thought that as soon as Mind Games was released, well, I would think that you'd both instantly listen to it and see the finished product after.
Never. I didn't listen to it for probably
I,
6 years.
I don't. I used to listen to the albums that I would do. Sometimes I would listen to it once. I don't remember with Mind Games. I think I may have done it once, and then, interestingly enough, it was many, many years actually. Actually, when the Mind Games project was announced, and then we all did these interviews with Simon Hilton.
Hmm.
That when we did our interviews, he played us the tracks and all the variations on the tracks. I mean, a lot of the music came back to me in my memory, but it had been years since I'd heard it. And I was it was a very emotional experience in a way, listening to all of us play because we sounded like a band. After all these
Mhm.
years, after 50 years, it sounded like we'd been together, and which we actually had been, David and I and Rick and not so much Keltner because Keltner's a West Coast guy, but Gordon Edwards. I mean, we did sound like a band on that record, and it was very very moving in one way. It's very musical, and brought back a lot of memories. Although the memories, many of them are vague because it was 50 years ago.
Right. Now, could you talk about the Yoko album? What was the difference between working on a Yoko song compared to a John song? Was she very much in control of what she wanted, or was it very free form? How was that?
Let's see. Well, when I was producing her, I remember that I personally didn't think her songs were as good as John's. Honestly, I just didn't think they were. But she asked me to produce a record. I'm a professional musician, so you
Yeah.
produce a record. So I do remember she wrote these little ditties kind of songs, and I would like write the chord changes over the lyrics and stuff, and then try to come up with a way to play it. I sort of did all the arrangements on that record.
Hmm.
So uh, there were no real arrangements. They were just like here's a melody, here's a lyric, and I would do that. But uh, yeah, and once again, to me, it was just it was sort of was a gig. It was a gig, and I'm a professional musician. So if somebody calls you and says, "Here's what it pays. Here's what you're going to do," and I did it kind of in that spirit, actually.
Right. Well, did she tell the musicians kind of what she wanted in the songs? Did she have a good idea?
No, I mean, I did because I was the leader. I was the MD. I arranged this stuff and I told the musicians what to play because I was the one leading sessions. Yeah,
Yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, she came in with poetry type of songs, you
yeah,
know, and I'm not an expert in Japanese poetry to say the least, but they struck me in my mind as being, as a matter of fact, she gave me a copy of Grapefruit, the poetry book
Yeah.
that she had,
yes, me too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and reading those, I could see a Yokoism about him. I mean, there was a Yoko essence about the poetry and about the way she wrote lyrics to songs. I
yeah,
mean, I agree with David. I don't, you know, John, of course, was a gifted songwriter, lyricist, and melody, and he came up with these unusual rhythms, and not in every song, but
yeah.
there were, it was great songwriting, terrific songwriting, you know, and certainly Yoko wasn't like John that way, you know. I don't think anybody would think that, although she did contribute, I guess, to other things later in there when they were writing together. But
Mhm.
certainly, John was a giant when it comes to that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think you can confuse the two. It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be confused, really.
I'm just talking because the two of you were there, and I wanted to know how, if she ever instructed the musicians as to what to play, if she had definite ideas at all, you know. Whereas John, based on everything I've heard from the two of you, he kind of knew pretty much what he wanted.
Yeah, well, John was. I mean, John wasn't just a songwriter. He was a band. He was a band guy. I mean, listen, he was in one of the best bands ever in the world. So, he had ideas that were deeper than just the melody and the lyric, and
Right.
he could convey them. It's a very different ball game.
John knew what he wanted. You hear all these stories about the Beatles taking months and months to make an album, and that may have happened. I'm not a Beatles expert and all the Beatles lore, but when John came to work, he came to work, and when we did the Pussycats album in L.A. with for Harry that he produced for Harry Nilsson,
Hmm.
if we started too late, it was sort of, I could sense a certain frustration because once he got to the studio, he was ready to work. And so there was an efficiency about him. And one time we were doing some ballad on one of the albums and he told me to play like Hey Jude piano, very triadic and quarter note. And I added an eighth note and right away through the talkback, he said, Kenny, don't do that. He stopped
Mm.
me right away because he didn't want the extra eighth note. And
Hmm.
he said, we didn't stop the take, but that was his way of saying, okay, he wasn't bossy. John wasn't bossy. He did things with a sense of humor, but he knew what he wanted. I got the feeling, as a matter of fact, one thing I've said before in other interviews is that I always get the feeling with McCartney and Lennon that they didn't just write songs; they heard the production of
Mm.
it.
Yeah, well,
And
when you listen to even some of the Beatles records, I mean, and you listen to the parts that the guys were playing on the record, not just the song, like the guitar part, the piano part, the drum part, they're all part of the song. It's like you wouldn't even picture those songs without those parts that they play. Like da 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 da. I give you everything. Da 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 da. I mean, that little guitar thing is part of the song. It's
That's right.
like the question. The guitar asks the question, and the lyric answers the question. So, day tripper, da 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 da. That's just more. That's just as important as the melody. So
yeah, yeah,
they were basically arrangers and melodists.
yeah.
They, like you said, Ken, they heard the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's what made them
They
such.
did, and then when you put the George Martin influence in
Oh,
there, we had years of. We all wish that those years could have
oh,
continued even more, but it was a very very rarefied era
yeah,
during those years because that's real record making. I mean, that was just amazing record making. We went from the days of live,
yeah.
orchestra with pop singers to tracking,
Hmm.
but when the way the Beatles did their thing, it was a big influence, I think, on a lot of us because it was like one big hook. The
Yeah,
parts were a hook,
Yes.
The melody was a hook, the lyric was a hook. It was wonderful.
The hook, yeah. There was something you could latch onto in every song, and it wasn't just the melody; it was everything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very perceptive
I,
there.
I think
I was
it's
going,
interesting. If I may, just a second, it's interesting that you mentioned "And I Love Her," David, and then I was thinking of when Paul revealed fairly recently later that
But
George Harrison actually thought of that guitar bit, right? The
yeah,
dun dun dun, that part.
I mean,
Which
it's four notes, but it might as well be ba 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 ba. It's four notes.
that's what makes the song in a way. That part, you know.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had a great, they had a great, what I called needle drop energy, you know,
oh,
when, like the old days when we all had 33 and a third LPs,
yeah,
there were certain tunes that as soon as you put the needle down on the album, it
yeah,
popped out at you.
yeah.
And the Beatles songs had that needle drop energy. Almost all of them did, I think, you know.
You know, it's interesting because I've told this in other interviews. I was not a Beatle fan when they first came out. I actually didn't get like everything I'm saying now. I'm
Mm.
saying as a grown up. When the Beatles came out, I was not a Beatle. I thought it was sort of trite. I thought it was silly. I thought it was corny. Honestly, in the beginning, but
Mm.
over time, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
The
Well,
Was
rest,
there an album that like was it a lot of people say around Rubber Soul or
yeah.
Revolver we
yeah,
started getting serious.
yeah. For me, it was the what was the Abbey Road? I mean, I can't think of the title of the record.
Sergeant Pepper maybe,
After Sergeant Pepper. It was even
after that.
after when I actually got into it. I mean, I could see that they were good. I knew they were commercial and all that, and I knew their success. But I wasn't even into that type of music at the time. I was listening to
Oh,
jazz and classical
Yeah.
guitar. And, you know,
interesting.
I wasn't really a rocker. I actually didn't come up as a rock and roller.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really my thing. But as time went on, I went like, oh my God. And now I feel very privileged to be part of that history.
Yeah.
Right.
I said, for me, it was Rubber Soul. I think just because there was sophistication that was becoming more obvious about them. You know, they started off with, and I hate to use the term teeny bopper, I want to hold your hand kind of music.
Sure.
And appealing, I could see that being appealing to a top 40 record market and the teeny bopper type of thing. Although I was in college by the time I heard that, and just one aside story. I remember when the Beatles came out with that record. I was working with I had a college job at Columbia University, and I would get to my breakfast gig at 7:30 in the morning, and there was the basketball team was also had a work study program, and I go downstairs to have breakfast with them before we started work, and what are they singing? I want to hold your hand. And early Beatles songs, and I said, "What is this phenomenon? This is what's going on here? You know, it's a big deal."
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting. My recollection, I was a kid, and my mother. I mean, I was already playing guitar a lot. I started playing at 8 years old, so
Mm.
I'm 13 or 14 years old now. And my mother wakes me up. She goes, "Oh, the British invasion! Come on, you got to watch this on the news. The British invasion." I thought we were being invaded by British.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she wakes me up, and it's the showing the Beatles with their haircuts, and it was either I Want to Hold Your Hand or one of those songs, and I was like, you woke me up for this? Because at the time I was taking the train from Mamaroneck, New York to the Apollo, and I was going to see James Brown. I saw
Mm.
Ike and Tina Turner. I saw Marvin Gaye. That's the music that spoke to me. So I saw this and I was like, Mom, what is this? And then when you think 5 years later, I'm playing on the Ram album.
Yeah. Yeah.
How weird
Mm.
is that?
Didn't you
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
any of the R&B influence
Was
from the Beatles? Didn't you hear any of the R&B influence?
Well, I did later, not in the beginning. Like Kenny said, I just thought it's very commercial. It's really cute, and they're cute. I mean, I could see the whole marketing thing of it. Like they're four cute guys. They sing these cute songs. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. But that was not something that I was interested in. So it
Hmm.
was weird when I ever got chosen to do that. When Yoko called me, it was like very surreal. I went from 15 years old to 21 years old, and now I'm playing with John Lennon and McCartney, and like it was just surreal because I didn't think I would be the pick. That was nothing I even listened to. And that was
Right.
That's a good word for it. Surreal is a good. That's how I felt when I was doing especially the first album with Mind Games. It was like surreal. I mean, I'm here with David and Keltner. Keltner I knew about from Mad Dogs and Englishmen and that era, and the fact that he was a big studio drummer in L.A. and all that. And I mean, it was just very surreal. And I mean, I came to music through my parents and through jazz and through pop songs, and whatever the pop songs were. I mean, we went through the whatever, I mean, when I was growing up, it was the Johnny Ray, Mitch Miller, Rosemary Clooney novelty song type things for a while. I mean, there were some really great songs, but that was a sort of a novelty period. And then we get Elvis, this phenomenon. And then the Beatles became the next phenomenon. It was a package. And I don't know how calculated it was, but I mean, I get the feeling that between Brian Epstein and some of the other people around them, this was a very smart packaging besides the music. And it just so happened that you have, very talented people that were the package and that lasted. We all wish it lasted longer, but we were very, very fortunate to be in their aura, so to speak.
And yeah, look what they did in the 6 short years or whatever. I mean, when you look on the songs they wrote, I have the Beatles book that with all some Japanese guy did orchestrations on every song, and you look at this thing, look at the amount of stuff they did, which they didn't write down. Somebody else wrote it down because they were not really orchestrators or anything like that. They just did it, like a garage band, and they came up with all that stuff in 6 years. When you look at it, you can't help but be amazed at it.
It's just incredible to think in such a short period of time how they packed it with so much music, and
Yes,
there's really no filler in there. I mean, it's all solid stuff.
No, it's amazing. It reminds me the type of energy, and it's hard to believe now that you're saying, was it only 6 years? Was that all it was, basically?
Well,
I think
A little.
the recording part was from towards the end of 62 through, well, if you count I Me Mine with 3 of the 4 of them, that's January of 1970. So you're looking at 7 years.
Yeah, not very long. When you look at the amount of titles in that book that they wrote, the songs they wrote in that amount of time, that's some Mozart shit.
It takes people 7 years to make an album these days.
Exactly.
It's funny because I think about the energy that those guys had for 7 years, and I think an analogy might be, I always thought of the Saturday Night Live period when who was it, Martin Short and that group was on that show.
Yeah.
And it always seemed like it was at least 2 years to me, but it was 1 year for those people.
Yeah.
And the fact is that there was a magic about that group of people for only 1 year.
Yeah.
Now, 1 year is not 7 years, but nevertheless, the Beatles, look what that kind of energy how long it can last, because we're still living with the Beatles, obviously, and we're still living with that cast. Those people have gone on to do other things, but it's that same magical combination of people.
Yeah. No, it's strange. And when you think about it, it's to this day, with all the different bands there are in the world, the Beatles still are the best band in the world.
Got it.
When you think about it, it's crazy. There's all the bands out there, but none of them compare with what the Beatles already did. It's like they're still the best band that ever lived.
And it's also the fact that the songwriting, either together, McCartney and Lennon together, or George either when he was there with something, or Here Comes the Sun, or those kind of things.
Yes.
I mean, they're terrific songs, and there's a bit of the English music hall in some of that material. There's tradition behind them.
Yes.
We talk about the Great American Songbook, but they're very much a part of this larger than Great American Songbook. This is a literature, a pop literature that is very hard to equal.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you hear McCartney's writing. I think that's also what made them so different when people heard them over here. We didn't hear that kind of stuff. Some of the writing is almost vaudevillian.
Yeah.
And I think that was so interesting to people because not only were they doing rock and roll, they were doing this sort of vaudevillian stuff that none of us heard. We were coming from doo-wop in the days when the Beatles came up. It was C, A minor, F, and G. and all of a sudden they're playing different changes
Right.
that go back to something that McCartney must have heard when he was a kid in
Right.
Liverpool that had nothing to do with rock and roll. Yet he could sing his ass off. He's one of the best rock singers ever.
Yes,
That's
he-
right.
But then he
Right.
could do that vaudevillian type stuff.
Yeah.
So they were so unique. They were so unique. How could you, you just can't argue with it.
And
Yeah.
versatile, very versatile. I mean,
Very
you get a
Yes.
song like Michelle,
Oh,
and you get songs like just like A Day in the Life. It's just
Oh.
amazing variety of style.
Yeah.
And I don't, I'm really not a big biography reader, but they must have come from this background. Lucy in the Sky is one side. I mean, my goodness,
Hmm.
it's like, that was the great thing about the Beatle albums. You never knew what the surprises were going to be, especially in the first listening. And then, of course, in those days, you go back and listen to it again, and it would be like listening to classical music, where every time you listen, you hear something that you didn't hear before. All
Yeah.
these nice surprises.
yeah.
And
And
it's,
I'm sorry.
that's certainly the case when you listen to this Mind Games box set, because you got all these different things. I
Yeah.
mean, you can pick it apart song by song and hear all the different instrumentation.
Yeah.
But
And it was weird for like Kenny and I. I'm not that I'm speaking for Kenny, but tell me if you agree, Kenny. When we became studio musicians, we were never really band guys. We were always single warrior kind of
Yeah.
musicians. Like
Hmm.
you get called, we didn't know if we were going to play a jingle in the morning, a soundtrack for a movie, or a John Lennon record, or a jazz date with Les McCann. I would go one day. It'd be Les McCann in the morning, Aretha Franklin at night, and John Lennon, the next morning.
Yeah,
And then,
at
and
the
that would
time,
be my career. It was so convoluted and so different. We were never really band guys. We were just like single warriors that got
very
asked,
true.
right? And so it's a different thing. I never really considered myself a band. I mean, I had bands till I was maybe 16 years old. But by the time I was 17, I was being called to play on sessions as a single person. I would come in. I didn't know if I was going to see Kenny or Richard T. or Bernard Purdy or Chuck Rainey. I didn't know who was going to be on the sessions.
Hmm.
Went in, and that was my whole career, being like a sort of a single warrior with your guitar.
I agree with David. I think around the same time we were doing the Mind Games album, I was also recording a live with singer and orchestra, everybody together at the same time with Perry Como. So talk
Mm.
about alpha and omega. It's just sort of like, wow, man, this is what of going to work at a certain time of day was with Perry, and then another time of the day was with John, and it was quite a difference.
Yeah, and it helped that the two of you have such varied taste in music, and part of that was through the Beatles, but you already developed taste long before the Beatles too. And I know that Kit wants to ask a question about, because you were both talking about your jazz backgrounds and all. So I'll pass you over to her.
Well, thank you, Ken. Yeah, as you were talking about jazz, I was I was leaning forward because I was kind of brought up in jazz because my father was an amateur jazz musician, and so I was when I was researching you both, because as I've been listening to the Mind Games box set and getting to hear more in depth particularly in the elements mixes, your different parts, I've really gotten to appreciate more the different parts you've played. So I wanted to learn more about your background. So David, I for instance, I noticed that Wes Montgomery was such a huge influence on you. Yes. Yeah, and no kidding. And and that he was your first major influence. You learned to and you learned just by listening and
Yeah.
learning. I mean, that must have taken an enormous amount of time to learn just by ear.
Yeah, it did, and especially like Kenny Answer was saying, I had to put the Victrola on 33 and a third so that I could hear Wes's runs half the speed and down an octave, so I could figure out what the fuck he was playing. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Wow.
I used to skip school. I used to skip school to stay home and try to figure out what Wes was playing.
My
Wow.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Honestly.
And then Ken, you played with Woody Herman.
Yes, I did. I was a joy for me because I'd heard the band. My parents took me into the Blue Note in Chicago, where we were living in a suburb of Chicago, and we got into Chicago, and I heard this, just this sound coming at me with five trumpets and three trombones and four saxes and the rhythm section. It blew me away, and even at like whatever I was, 6 years old, I thought, first of all, there's something romantic for a young kid, or at least it was for me, romantic in the sense of there's a feeling to going downstairs into a nightclub where it was slightly dark with the lights on the stage. And it was up to this place called the Blue Note,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden the band comes out and they sit down and the first tune is In Your Face, just blew me away. So I joined that band when I right out of college. So it was sort of a dream that I'd had, because I said to myself at 6 years old, I said, I want to do that. I really want to do that.
Hmm.
And then I found out what studio musicians did. And I realized that I didn't want to be on the road all the time. And I said, gee, what do studio musicians do? And my dad explained, well, these guys have been in the big bands, but they settle down and they have a family and they go to work every day. And
That's
then
so
I
fun.
was, and I said, you mean to tell me they play great music from 10 in the morning till 1 in the morning, or from 10 to 10, and they can stay home and have a family? And I said, I want to do that.
That's
So, and
funny.
then, I've been lucky, or I should say, I've been blessed to have done that, thanks to good friends like David and some people that I met early on when I got off of Woody's band, actually.
That's funny you should say that because I got to see Wes and his brother when he played with Buddy Montgomery at the Village Vanguard. I went down there and actually got to meet Wes. I was probably 15 or 16.
Wow.
And I remember being in the Village Vanguard, just realizing that I loved the music, but I thought, wow, is this the life? Do I have to play in clubs like this? And it wasn't packed or anything. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and I went back and introduced myself to Wes, and he shook my hand. He said, "You play the guitar?" I said, "Yeah, I play the guitar." I said, "Not like you, but I play the guitar." But I remember leaving and saying to myself, I don't think I'm going to be like a jazz musician. I'm just going to keep practicing and try to, learn different styles of music. And I didn't call it studio musician. I didn't even know what a studio musician was. I just thought, this is I don't think I could just do this and be in these jazz clubs. And I remember going home and starting to like play other types of music, still loving Wes and everything. But I knew that I wanted my career to be more eclectic.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
My
Can you
parents,
just
go ahead.
oh sorry.
Yeah.
No, say can you just mention about what it was like seeing a show at like Birdland or Village Vanguard? It's was a dream because I'm a huge jazz fan myself. And I would have loved to have had the opportunity to see like a really, great jazz show at one of those places.
Well, Kenny, what do you
I
think?
don't know. I still find it to be, um, there's a certain excitement, whether it's the Vanguard or you can be in any city with a good musician. I was in
Mm.
Kansas City when I was on the road with Woody, and I happened to go into some place after we finished work, and I just was hungry, and it turned out there was music in it, and I heard this great piano player whose name I don't even remember. I wish I did. But I said, boy, you can be any just about, well, you can't be in certain cities, but it just so happened I was in Kansas City and I hear this fantastic piano player. And there's something very exciting when you get to your seat and you sit down and you're waiting. It can be very disappointing at times, but a lot of the time for me, it's very exciting because you're hearing, um, someone who is communicating something, whether he or she wants to communicate or may be very introspective about what they're doing, but they're sharing some of themselves with you.
Mm.
And it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's a certain thing when it's right as musicians, and again, David can agree with me or not. There's a certain magic that happens when you're communicating with other musicians and with an audience. And there's a feeling of being at one with the universe in a sense. I mean, it's a spiritual. I don't know. It's hard to describe unless you've been there. But I think you don't have to be a musician to experience it. You can feel that as an audience.
No, it's
And
funny you mention that because I think, as you said, the magic, even though the recording scene was very good to us, financially and even and creatively, there's still to this day what Kenny just said. Just to reiterate, the most fun I've ever had in music is when you're on the bandstand and it all comes together, and the rhythm section is burning, the audience is loving it, the cute waitresses love you. I mean,
yeah,
all of that happens. That is like the most fun of music right there. That's
Uh,
what I mean, recording is fun, but recording is sort of clinical. It's clinical. You're in the studio with a producer and there's a red light and the red light goes on. And you got to play this take and you got to not make a mistake. And it's a different thing. But on the bandstand, when that clicks, that is one of the greatest. That's probably the reason we started playing music.
yeah, and there that feeling, the feeling that sometimes happens, even though you may have played the same tune over and
Yes.
over again.
Yeah.
There are certain things, certain times on stage when something happens that is new to the chart, so to speak, new to the arrangement.
Yeah.
A moment or two where everybody plays the same rhythm, or this something that happens that you can tell you are a band, and there's a communication, and you don't have to. You don't even talk about it. You just do it, and there's
Yeah.
that always brings smiles to everybody. I mean, it's just like wow, it's a magical moment.
Yeah.
That's
There's nothing else
amazing.
like it.
Yep, that's
Mhm.
right. So, you mentioned, David, about how you decided not to become a jazz musician and, but pursue other, other kinds of music. So you go into mind games, both of you go into mind games. Or any kind of session, but we're just going to use mind games for this
Yeah.
particular interview. So do you take though, what you learned from, Woody Herman, from Wes Montgomery, do you take any of those kinds of lessons as you go into mind games?
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. You know what? You bring it all with you. You know what it is. Everything that we studied. Like I was studying classical guitar at the time, for instance. So I wanted to get my right hand chops, to play classical. And I was studying with this guy Leonid Bolatine, who started the classical guitar department in Mannes School of Music. But at the time, he just taught at his home. I went to his home. There wasn't a classical guitar, even in Juilliard at the time. They considered a classical guitar not a legitimate instrument, actually. So I was studying with him, and there's that one tune on Mind Games, I always forget the name of it, where I had to play this thing and I needed the classical technique. So I'm glad it showed up because I've been playing for 6 years. I was taking classical guitar, so when I had to play that introduction, once again, I can't remember the name of the song.
Out the blue.
Yeah,
Out the blue.
yeah, that's it. Yes.
Okay.
And he asked me he played it on piano and he said, "Why don't you play it on guitar?" Which was a lot. I could have played it on piano, to tell you the truth, easier than on the guitar.
Hmm.
I do have some piano chops, but on the guitar it was a little awkward, but I learned it because I had been studying classical guitar, so I had the facility to be able to learn it and play it. So yeah, I think when you bring in your jazz background, you bring in your rock and roll, you bring in your sight reading, and you bring in your ears. Sometimes there's nothing written, so you have to make it up. Sometimes we have to sight read something that someone wrote. So as a studio musician, we had to sort of have a big arsenal of music that we can. Right.
And you learn how to trust whatever that is, to the best of your ability. There's certain days when that's just working like crazy.
Right.
And then there's certain days when the old expression is we can't find one in the beginning of the bar, when you're tired or fatigued or overworked or sometimes. Luckily, that doesn't happen very often, but we bring that whole thing and then we couple that with an open mind about
Yeah.
what is it that we're doing today? How
What's
can I contribute today? Because playing on a record is different than playing live. It's a different type of thing, and it's like what the actors talk about when they're on screen. A stage actor can make a very broad gesture on stage, but if that actor or actress makes the same gesture on screen, it looks overdone, overblown. So the microphone is somewhat similar. If you overplay in
Yep.
certain ways, it sounds awkward, it sounds overdone, it doesn't fit, it gets in the way. And so we all learn how hopefully and continue to learn how to surrender ourselves to the project, to the song,
Yeah.
An arranger friend of mine said the most important thing is the singer and the song, and then comes the musicians and the arrangement, etc., and the production. But the most important thing is the material and the person playing it or singing it.
Yes, you have to honor the song. You have to. Can I tell a little anecdote story about a friend of mine, also a studio musician that I know Kenny loved? Hugh McCracken.
Yeah.
Like, talk,
Yeah.
just don't mind if I do a shout out here for a minute.
No, no problem.
Oh, McCracken, in our world, McCracken was like Mr. Slowhand. He didn't have the facility on the guitar that me or John Tropez or Jeff Mironoff or Dean Parks or Larry Carlton. He didn't have that stuff. What Huey had, and we all learned it from him, was to listen to the song and come up with the quintessential guitar part that
Absolutely.
elevates the song. Not about him, makes the song come alive.
Yep.
And one time we were doing a Mary Clayton album, I'll never forget. And Huey always admired the way I sounded, and I always admired the way he sounded. And he liked my guitar. I had a Telecaster, and he had a 335 Gibson or something. So one day we said, right before the take, let's switch guitars. And we'll go in and hear a playback. And it was on this Mary Clayton album, which I don't even know if the album ever came to fruition. And he made up this part that was so perfect. And my part was a little busy, and it was sort of getting in the way. So when I went to listen to playback, I realized his part was loud, my part was soft, and I still sounded like me, and he still sounded like him. We switched guitars, and we both cracked up because I learned, wow, he just came up with a better guitar part than I did that helped the song along, and my stuff was a little bit gibberish and got in the way, so they put it back, and we laughed about that, and that was the day that you and I became friends. It was like because at the time we were sort of rivals. I was a studio musician, he was a studio musician. I wanted the gigs he was getting, he wanted the gigs I was getting. But that day brought us into focus, and it taught me how to listen to the song and not play from your egocentric guitar thing, and actually listen to the song and play something that elevates the song.
Huey was the.
Was he greatest at that?
Yeah,
Wasn't Huey ridiculous at that?
Beg pardon?
I said, wasn't McCracken a genius at that?
Yeah, I use the expression if I was an arranger and writing a guitar part out, I don't know how long it would take me to. I mean, it would take me forever to come up with something as perfect as what Huey came up with, and he did it again out of instinct, and he knew how to elevate the song, and he was just fantastic at that. He
If
had
you
great
go back
talent.
to-
He had a great
Right.
feel to it too.
Sorry, you can finish. Oh, I thought you were going to finish.
No, I mean, it's just, what David said about him was absolutely right. He just, if I thought about it for, I was gonna say 10 years, it would take me longer to come up with something as good as what Huey played, he was great at that.
Yeah, one example of that is Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey,
Yeah.
because there are those three notes that he plays in the middle of the song, da da da, and it makes a big difference in the whole arrangement
Yeah.
of the song. So, and
Yeah.
since we're bringing up Hugh, and you were talking about this a few moments ago, a lot of fans are aware of the fact that he was offered to be in Wings.
Yeah.
Turned it down because he didn't want life on the road. He wanted to be with his family, and he liked being a studio musician and knowing where to go every single day. If it was in New York City or something, it was a job to him, and he preferred that. So it's very similar to what the two of you were saying.
Yeah. Well, I did the first part of Ram, and Huey came in and did the second part. We're both on that record. And
Yep.
I had a conflict. Same thing. I mean, McCartney talked to me about Wings too, but there was no way I was leaving town. It just wasn't for me or Huey. Huey and I discussed it a lot. I remember when he went to London and spent a couple of weeks there and then came back, and he said, I can't do it. I can't do it. Huey and I were very tight.
Yeah. Telling you, he's like in my top 5 of people I wish I had interviewed and never got around to it.
Well, you to get Huey to talk, you would have to shoot him up with something. He did not. He didn't do interviews. He didn't like to talk to people. He was very shy. He just didn't like it. I did a couple of interviews with him where he just froze, and I had to talk for him. He really didn't. He didn't really like doing interviews.
Yeah. Joe?
Well, though I have a bunch of things that I wanted to bring up. You talked about elevating the song, you know, and I got to say this because I'm going to gush like a fanboy here with this, but I want to ask you, David. On the Mind Games album, I love a lot of the work that you did on there. I mean, all the time. Every time we discuss the album here, I'm always gushing about stuff like I don't know if you don't remember the names of the songs because I know it's been a while,
I'm
but
sorry. Yeah, I'm
like
terrible.
Tight As and also I See My Sin, which it has like this really sublime, biting guitar work in there that complements the song, and that is alone my favorite moment, maybe on the whole Mind Games album, is the guitar playing on that. And I just wondered, I mean, I'm wondering how much of this stuff is one of the questions you already answered, sort of like, is it something that you just kind of did from the gut and John liked it, or did he say, no, play it like that? But you kind of answered that a little bit, but maybe there were
Well,
exceptions.
uh, as far as the tracking part of it, before I did the solo, which I am proud of that solo. I didn't listen to it for years because I always had a hard time. But as far as the tracking part, the backing part, before I play that extended solo at the end, he probably asked me to play what I played, and it made sense for the song. Now, when it came to the solo, I just remember we finished the track, and John said, "Let's throw a solo on there. Can you play a solo?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And I did, and that solo was a one take solo all the way through, no edits or anything like that. And I just remember him hitting the talk back and going, "That's the best damn solo you played on anybody's record," or something.
Yeah, I like
But
them.
I was just happy to get through it because honestly, I know he wanted a screaming type of bluesy solo, but the chord structure wasn't bluesy, so you couldn't just play the blues. So like I remember just staring at all the changes as if it was like a bebop tune or something, thinking, okay, well, what notes are going to work now? It's just not C, F, and G. It was like extended. It was the whole structure of the whole song. So I'm thinking, I was staring at the changes, just trying not to lose my place, and that's what came out. And that was just me. It was an improvisational solo that I did. It was one take. I think I did another take, which somebody found somewhere and sent it to me. I don't know where they got it, but he definitely chose, I think, the best one. And it was my first. It was one take. I was petrified, but I got through it.
It's wonderful. Every time I hear it, it's so full of emotion, and the way the song is, what it's about, and feeling like heartbroken, trying to apologize, and it just feels like it's meant for that song. I just really think you nailed it with that.
Well, thank you. It was one of those magic moments, but it's like, Babe Ruth pointing at the fence. I could probably never do it again.
Yeah, it's one of those, right? But that's lightning in the bottle. You got one.
Yeah, I pointed at the fence and the ball went there. But
Yeah, like Babe Ruth or something. Okay, could you compare working with John, say, versus Paul, maybe even Ringo with Ringo the Fourth? Like, is there a contrast, different ways they worked,
oh
John
yeah,
and Paul with Ringo?
yeah. I think Paul was more meticulous about sounds, and what I remember about working on the Ram album, which was different from Mind Games, was that on the Ram album, Paul would come in and work on a drum sound for a couple of hours. Like each song had to have a slightly different drum sound in it. And he worked on sounds a lot. He was more of producing himself. Whereas John was just more about the song. Here's the song, here's how it goes. Let's do a take. John seemed to want to work faster. Paul seemed to work more methodically. Not that it was bad, they just had different ways of working. They both got great, results from all of us musicians. But Paul was more methodical. Like with Paul, we'd work on one song for 8 hours, and maybe if we didn't get it, we'd come back the next day and try it again. Uh, like you mentioned about Huey playing on. That's when I left the record. I played on Uncle Albert for 2 days, and then I put the next sessions, and Huey came in, and then he played on Uncle Albert, and his thing wound up on the record because he came up with that line, do 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 do, which is a great line. But I played on Uncle Albert for 2 days. We worked on Uncle Albert. It just never made the record. So it was different. Like I don't Lennon, we would do 3 songs in an evening. With McCartney, you could do one song in 3 days. Very different, very different.
Yeah. Because John always, this is with the Beatles, it was always kind of said like he was more impatient.
Well,
Let's get it out of here. Let's do it.
yeah, that's how I felt too. When he was not that he was impatient, he just wanted to go. Like Kenny said, we come in at 10 o'clock. He plays you the song. let's hit record and let's play it. McCartney was not like that. We worked on sounds, guitar sounds, bass sound. Well, he actually didn't even play bass on Ram until afterwards. I never heard McCartney play one note on Ram until I bought the record. I worked with him for 4 weeks. He never even picked up a bass, and I never heard him play bass the whole 4 weeks. We cut all the tracks, just me, him, and Denny Sywell. Him and I either doubling acoustic guitars or him playing piano, me playing acoustic or electric, and drums. No bass. I never heard the bass on the Ram album until the record came out. He would make up his bass parts after the vocals. That's why his stuff always sounds so great. He thought of it like Bach, the top melody and the bass and the bottom, but he put the bottom on afterwards. So people would say to me, "What was it like playing with McCartney on bass?" I've never heard him play bass. I never heard him. There wasn't even a bass guitar in the room when I did the Ram album for 4 weeks. I never even saw a bass guitar anywhere in the studio. Honest.
I never knew that until just now. I never knew that.
True story.
Amazing.
Back in like around 77-ish, was Ringo just having a good time back then in the 70s? You know what I mean?
Yeah, when I met him, he was a wild drunk.
That's what I mean.
Oh my God, in the sessions. And he was so not having us studio musicians. It was really funny. I mean, Steve Gadd was on the session, even though it's a drum session. Tony Levin is playing bass. I'm playing guitar. I think Richard T played some piano, all the New York cats and everything. Yeah. And Ringo was just out of a bottle of something, whatever he was drinking at the time. And I don't think he even liked doing the record. He was so not having us studio guys. And it was just very strange. It was a strange vibe. I mean, he was a cute guy. I didn't hear him play that much. Sometimes Steve was playing, sometimes he was playing, but I think he resented the whole thing of being in New York with studio musicians, and I don't think he cared for it. Honestly, that's what
it's interesting. Well, I kind of guessed that at that point in his life. Of course, that's not the case anymore. But at that particular point,
No.
Can I ask Ken Ascher a question? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering, Ken. Being that you played on a few John Lennon albums, now you had already said that I believe probably Mind Games was like maybe the best experience. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but out of all John's albums, do you have a favorite that you played on, or maybe a special memory?
I don't have a favorite. The first one, of course, the first album is always, the first time is the regular, is the very memorable one. And then right after we did Mind Games, John produced Harry's album, the Pussycats record. And I got a call to go out there and play on that, and then eventually ended up doing some orchestrations of ideas that John and Harry had for the string parts, the overdubs. And then came the Walls and Bridges album. On the Walls and Bridges album, where I was hired to play keyboard, they also hired Nicky Hopkins, the wonderful English pianist, studio pianist and rock and roll player. Wonderful musician he was. And Nicky came over to me and he said, on that session, he said, "I hope you don't mind it, but I don't like to play anything but regular piano. I don't like playing, he just wanted to play the grand." And I said, "If that's what makes you comfortable, I'm happy to play organ or Wurlitzer or whatever other keyboard John wants me to play." There was a small little spinet piano, which we played on one of the tunes, or maybe more than one. And I was, I was just happy to be there. And in the rock and roll album, I guess from what I heard, that John started that record with Phil Spector out in California. And they did 4 or 5 tracks out there, and then we finished the album in New York. And that was just, tunes that we'd all played when we were much younger, And I remember we did Peggy Sue, the Buddy Holly tune. And I remember walking over to John and saying, there's no piano on Peggy Sue. And he just sort of looked at me and he said, "Well, just play the basic changes. You don't have to make a big piano part out of it. Just play the changes and the rhythm section will take care of it." And, it was just fun to play the perspective about playing, the rock and roll tunes with Lennon was great fun because it was just tunes that we'd grown up with and played and heard, and Chuck Berry this and Little Richard, and especially Little Richard tunes for a piano player. It's just so much fun to play, and that didn't take us long either. I mean, John, we rehearsed for a day or two, um, and then came in and just cut the rest of the tune real quick. I mean, we all knew the tunes basically, but it was pretty quick. I don't have I guess my favorite, because it was the first, was Mind Games, but they were all fun. I mean, I loved working with John because he was, like I say, he was very direct, and he knew what he wanted, and that's a pleasure for any musician. I like direction myself. Otherwise, I'll do what I think is appropriate, and then they can tell me not to do it, or that it's wrong, or it's a terrible idea. But I like the direction from a good producer.
Yeah, I feel the same. In fact, when I produced records, and I produced a James Taylor record called Walking Man, and I produced a bunch of, and I learned from some of the arranger and producer guys that I really respected. I tried to gear myself to them. Like, you come in with as much information as you can give the musicians, because it's your responsibility. It's your baby. You're the producer. You get together, you learn the song, you figure out what's going to be a good piano part, and you try to give people as much information as you can. Now you leave some room for creativity, but you shouldn't come in there with nothing and just, like, they don't just shoot a film with no screenplay. They don't, let's get the actors in the room and see what happens. Well, it's the same thing with music. I feel like if I'm the leader of a situation, I have to come in there with something to tell the bass player and the piano player, and to get this going in the right direction. Now they're going to add their personality to it, but you have a responsibility to come in there with something on the paper. That's how I look at it.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, Ken, like on songs like Mind Games, the piano you played on that, or the keyboards, was like right out of the church. I mean, I loved what you did there. And I wonder, did John, instruct you to do that, or was that something that, you came up with, or?
John told, I have to give complete credit to John, because I think he may have even played that part, or
Oh, wow.
he didn't play it for 4 minutes or whatever. I don't know how long that album, I mean, that cut is, but this is what I want, and he showed me what he wanted, and so he gets all the credit for that. I just played what he wanted me to play.
Wow. Okay.
And then he would sing me lines, he'd down, bo, do, dee, and then we'd put a synthesizer line on top of that, and doubled that, and yeah, he came in. He pretty much had the conception of the tune down.
Yeah, I just remember him doing that on with King Curtis, I think, on It's So Hard with the sax. There's some outtakes where he's like doing like he's like he's speaking the saxophone what he wants on that. I remember hearing that.
Huh.
All right. Can I ask Ken a question here about, since you mentioned Harry Nilsson's Pussycats album? You did the string arrangement for Many Rivers to Cross, right?
Yes, yes. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then that was used, the same string arrangement for Number 9 Dream.
I remember. I think I was aware of it. Obviously, if you're a musician, you remember the notes, and it was an interesting way to work with Harry and John. John had his big Mellotron upstairs at the record plant, and it wasn't the Mellotron, the small one with the flute and the cello and the violin. There were tons of sounds in John's Mellotron upstairs. And it shows you how far we've come recording wise. We would take the rough mixes of the tracks that Harry recorded and John that we recorded, put that into a cassette player on the left, push play, record that onto a cassette player on the right-hand side of the keyboard after pushing record. And as both cassette players were playing, John and or Harry would play string ideas. And we would do it over and, not tons of times, but we would do it until they liked what they played, which would eventually be recorded onto cassette B, so to speak.
That's
I
funny.
would then take the cassette home and sit practically where I'm sitting now with my score paper, my cassette player, put the cassette in, and literally take dictation and orchestrate and then add pads underneath or whatever. But I would always play the lines that they would play. That once they told me that's what we want, that's how that happened. With the Walton Bridges, it was different because we got together. I got together with John at his apartment, and he would play me and sing me string lines over all the songs he wanted string parts on.
Hmm.
And I would say to John things like, well, where you're singing it may sound too low. I don't think it'll speak as well as you want it to. He says, I don't care what register you put it in, but I want to hear those notes. Now, the interesting thing about John, and this is partly, I think it's very significant into his musicianship, is that in those days we would get, I would write the parts out, and then you'd have to take it to the copyist. And then first of all, I'd need a few days to write the charts, And so between the dictation and the detail, I would finish that in a certain amount of days, let's say 2 or 3 days, and then give it to the copyist, and needed a couple of days or at least to record like 11 or 12. I mean, to copy all these tunes. And let's say, I guess it was at least 7 to 10 days after John and I had originally gotten together, where he told me these string lines. When we went in to do the string recording, he remembered every note, every counterpoint line that he told me he wanted. Now, after 10 days, if I had any doubts about John's memory or about his musicianship, which I didn't have, but this was the icing on the cake. Because on one tune, I think I may have added, I think it was on the Nilsson record, I added 4 bars as my own little tribute to George Martin. And John looked at me and said, "What's that? I didn't tell you to write that." He remembered. So he remembered what he didn't tell me to write, and he remembered every note that he told me to write, which to me is another indication of I don't necessarily want to call it genius, but it shows you how deep he heard things and how organized he was.
It's interesting because a lot of people, just to toot my horn and Kenny's horn, we weren't just studio players. Both of us are orchestrators, so we got to do all that kind of stuff too. We both write for strings and horns and that kind of thing. So, and a lot of it, we wrote lots of jingles. We worked at jingle companies. We had to do these overnight sessions. So Kenny and I, we're just players. We could orchestrate and we could bring out something, like you said. We could take transcription.
Right.
McCartney could sing me a line, say, write that for the trumpets, and he didn't know how to do it, but I knew how to do it. Kenny knows how to do it, so we were useful in that arena too, because we were arrangers, not just musicians.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we pass you over to Tom, I want to make sure I ask the two of you so I don't forget. Did either of you ever keep a diary of all the work you've done?
No, I didn't.
No, I never did.
No,
That's a shame. It's all listed chronologically.
I mean, I've gone to allmusic.com and I went, wow, did I do all of that? That's
that happens, right?
I have done that. I did that when someone said you should go on whatever, either music.com or one of those websites. And I said, gee, I remember doing that. I just, when you look at your life, especially let's say now after 50 years since Mind Games, you go, wow, that was a very good musical life, so to speak, and still is, for that matter. I mean, it's just different now. But
hey, could I do a plug? I just thought of something. Speaking of Beatles, can I do a plug?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, during the COVID time when we all had to stay at home, I had this idea in my head to do an imaginary Beatles Big Band record, and I just chose a bunch of tunes. And I sent, because all the guys, that play in New York, in Broadway shows or at the Met or whatever. They're all home doing nothing. So I did these tracks. I did 12 tracks, and I sent parts out to trumpet players, woodwind players, and they played it, gave it back. So it's all live, and I recorded it.
Mm.
It's not out yet, and it's really kind of cool. We're actually going to perform it live. Looks like
Cool.
November 17th at the Cutting Room at a brunch, and Kenny's playing piano.
Oh,
Very
wow.
cool.
Yeah, so
Very cool.
they haven't confirmed the date yet, but we're looking at November 17th, Sunday brunch at the Cutting Room with a 17-piece big band, all Beatles music.
Yay.
Oh, that's
Oh,
great.
nice. Oh, keep Ken posted, and you know, we'll
Yeah.
We'll be
Well,
mentioning it all the
yeah.
time on this show, and on my website it will be posted.
Hey, we'll promote it.
I have
Yep.
to make
Yeah.
sure to go to
Yeah,
that.
so that's that.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I did that. I just started writing charts just for the hell of it. And then guys were going, well, send me, I'll put the trumpet on it. Well, send it to me. I'll put the sax on it. Send it to me. I'll put the drums on. And the next thing I knew, I had 12. I have a whole album of big band Beatles music that I arranged.
Nice.
nice.
Anyway, hopefully you can come
All
and
right.
I definitely am going to try and make that.
Yeah.
I know Tom is chomping at the bit.
Yes, I am. Guys, this box set is a home run. Congratulations on the work that you've done on this box set. It is just drop dead gorgeous. It's perfect in every way. I'm a big fan of timelines. I love when something starts and something finishes, and I hope you can kind of give the me and the fans watching kind of like an insight of what goes behind the scenes of making a box set. So this box set came out, what, we're 2-3 months into the release of this set. Can you talk about the first time that the Lennon estate came to you to talk about having some literature or your thoughts down into this, and then listening to the tracks and whatnot? That can you kind of give us an idea of how far before the release were you guys contacted about this release?
I think it was about a year ago, maybe a year ago, when
Yeah.
Simon called and wanted to interview us. But I
Yep.
didn't know that the interview, honestly, was going to be part of the box set. I just thought he was interviewing us. I didn't know that they were going to have pictures of us and that interspersed with dialogue that we said talking to Simon. I really didn't even know that's what was going on. I thought we were just doing like an interview, and I had no idea it was going to be such an extravagant, beautiful box set that it turned out to be. Honestly, I was very naive about it. I didn't really know what it was. I just thought it was an interview.
Ken?
Dave and I have always talked to each other when we're approached about doing interviews. These people, what magazine do they write for? Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, it's all fine. It just that we want to make sure that we know what's going on, because it could be, unlike yourselves, it could be unofficial people who decide that they want to interview us, and that we're a bit, or at least I am a bit reticent about just doing any interview that may come along. But
Me too. I'm not, and that's why. Listen, I'm not on Facebook. I'm not. People have called me, go, can't ever find you. We can't ever find you anywhere. And I go, yeah, that's because I'm in the witness program. The witness protection program up in Connecticut. Leave me alone. So I don't do social. I don't tweet. I honestly don't. I don't really enjoy that stuff. I like having a private life, and
Right. Understood. Yeah. So I mean, hearing the isolated tracks, and you guys both talk very highly of each other and your bandmates, Edward Gordon and Keltner. Just hearing these tracks again after so long. I mean, did the memories come back to you, both of you, quickly, or did it take you a while to remember these sessions?
for me, I said it before, I think. I don't remember. I remembered the tunes as when Simon was playing these tunes back to us. I did not go and listen to the record first. I didn't prepare for the interview. I wanted to be more spontaneous, and because I wanted to react. I just wanted to just react to it as opposed to study it first and then react. And he started the interview, and luckily Dave, I think, went before me, and maybe Gordon did, and I didn't know it was going to be I didn't know the procedure, so I didn't know it was going to be, let's listen to this version. Now let's listen to this version. And now we'll listen to the one without the guitar. And then we'll listen without the piano. And then without the voice. And, my interview, I decided to do all at once. Dave, I think you split yours into 4-hour groups or something, and Gordon did. And we did 8 hours. But I had to tell you the truth. Um, you know, it sounds amazing, and I suppose it was in a certain way, but um, Simon is a very nice person. It was more like an 8-hour hang, really,
Mm.
and unique. That helped. The fact that it was talking about mind games, it was very flattering to do this, to be asked to do it. And the 8 hours, I can't say it went by quickly, but it was a hang. It was sort of a interview hang. We even would stop. Simon had to go walk his dog, so it was like we spent an afternoon together, but by Zoom. I mean, it was an amazing kind of thing. It was very well, high tech for me anyway, just to,
Right.
to do this kind of interview. And yeah, flattering, especially 50 years after the fact. I mean,
Right.
uh, it's sort of like a birthday, it's like, it's
Mm.
not a personal birthday, but it's a birthday of the project.
Right.
And so it made me very happy. It was emotional, like I said before. I
Yeah.
think it was more emotional going back and listening to John's voice.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's been like the main thing about these past Lennon box sets is really making sure his voice is in the forefront of all these tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, he sounded great. I mean, one emotional moment for me was when we sat there, in the what was it, the Dolby Theater when they were playing it back, that whole theater with the
Hmm.
hypey speakers and everything, and they came to my guitar solo on that Seamus and Yoko and I was sitting next to Rick Marotta, who I go back
Hmm.
longer than Kenny, and Rick and I met in a dance contest. I convinced him to play drums when we were kids. So our history and the fact that we're on this record together, and the guitar player that inspired me the day I made the decision I was going to be a professional musician was a guy named Link Chamberlain, who died very young,
Hmm.
46 years old. He was never a big star or anything like that. But I remember making the decision I was going to play like Link someday. And my guitar solo on that, I think I would have never been able to play that unless I admired that guy. And that came back to me so, well, I almost started,
Well,
and sitting with my buddy Rick, we came
yeah.
up together. That was so emotional.
Yeah, Rick's fantastic, and I've had the opportunity to talk to his brother Jerry on my other show, and he's quite a character as well. But two kind of solo things I'll for each one of you. I'll ask Ken first. Ken, we had the opportunity to do a show about a special song that's celebrating its 45th anniversary this year, and I'm wondering if you can just talk about the writing process with Paul Williams, and as the Rainbow Connection song that has a near, very special place in my heart. Can you just talk about, writing that song and
yeah,
just being a part
um,
of it?
first of all, thank you for that compliment. Um, it's been a very important part of my life, also from the 70s.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, this year was the John Lennon Mind Games birthday party, so to speak. And then it was around that same era that I started working with Paul Williams. Thank you to David, because David introduced me to
Mm.
Paul.
Wow.
And matter of fact, as I said before, David got me on the Yoko record, which went,
Right.
into the John Lennon period. So Paul and I, Rainbow Connection was the last song we wrote for the movie, and uh, we had written all the other songs, and we got finally to we sat down at the dinner table one night, and we were pretty tired because we were working pretty hard on it. And what happened was is Paul's wife looked at us and said, "You guys look very tired." And we said, "Well, it's very frustrating because we want to write a song for Kermit. I mean, he's the main Muppet, and so, but we know we want to pay tribute to Rainbow songs, um, And like Paul and I would occasionally write within a lyric or pay tribute to Over the Rainbow, from Wizard of Oz, or Look to the Rainbow from Finian's Rainbow, all the Rainbow songs. Paul wrote a song with Roger Nichols where there's a line in there called When There's No Getting Over That Rainbow, that I think David Spinozza played on the original track of Paul's.
Yeah, I
And
think I did.
anyway, so Katie looks at us and said, well, what's the problem? And I said, well, I know it's going to be in 3/4. And Paul looked at me and said, how do you know that? And I said, because I think it'll be very charming to see Kermit singing a waltz, or if it's not a waltz, it'll be it won't be just a snappy two-step number like you hear on the Muppet Show, on the TV show. And he said, okay, well, let's see, we'll go with that for a while. So, we started to eat dinner, and then uh, his wife, Katie, said, boy, you guys look so frustrated. Well, it's for Kermit. It's the first song in the movie. It's got to be really good. And she says, well, you guys are just looking for the Rainbow Connection. And we looked at each other, and we got up from the table, and we were both, I mean, I can tell you, I can feel it now, how I felt in my chest, and my whole body felt it, and all of a sudden I said, I think we're onto something. I don't know what it is. And Paul said something interesting to me. He said, we went into his music room with the piano. He said, don't play any chords. Take your index finger and play a melody. So I played C sharp, E, A, B, C sharp. And he heard da, 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 da. He said, that's it. And we wrote it.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah.
And
No, go ahead.
and then the way Paul and I usually work, from inspiration, we'd work at the same time in the same room most of the time. And we basically had the melody, the harmony, the structure was done that night. And much of the lyric was, and then Paul's way of working was to start a lyric and then finesse it. And then it didn't take him long to finesse, but we'd spend some of our time in one of his rooms in the house, and I would be pacing back and forth and giving him ideas, and vice versa. We both would needle each other in a good way. I use that not in a negative way. He'd come up with a line, or I'd come up with a melody, and he'd say, "That's not Kenny Ascher. That's not good enough. That's just too mundane." And it was very free. I could say the same thing to him. I said, I think that's okay, but it's not really inspirational at all. And so we had a very wonderful, open way of criticizing what the final product, what we wanted from the final product. And then, it didn't take Paul very long to finesse it. He was just, Paul's a wonderful lyricist. He's a wonderful lyricist, as we know.
Right.
And Kermit,
Yeah.
with all due respect to the various recordings we have of that song, I still love Kermit's the best.
Right. Yeah, we talked to Lawrence Struber a little while ago about, because he played on several different versions of it, and getting his memories and how complimented he was of you, and talking about Paul Williams. But this I mean, this album, I played this a lot growing up, so I just
Me
wanted to
too.
thank you for your work on that one. So, but David, three of the four tracks that you worked on with Paul and Ram ended up being as singles, which is kind of pretty fascinating as way. Eat at Home was a European single, Backseat of My Car was a UK single, and then obviously Another Day. I mean, that was a single everywhere. The only one that really didn't make it as a single was Three Legs, but very diverse, different sounding songs that you worked, especially, I mean, Backseat of My Car has to be in my top 10 favorite, McCartney solo songs of all time. And then that's because of, a lot of the work that you worked on, on that song.
Yeah, well, the first song I actually played with McCartney was Another Day, Just Another Day. That was the first song we did, which actually was not on the original Ram album.
Right, correct.
Yep.
That song, and I think it came out as a single. Then
Single, yep.
Right.
But then they put it on the Ram album, I think, when they reissued it.
Yeah.
But originally,
Yeah.
And I remember feeling, at the time I was like sort of, egocentric about my career. And when I sat down with Paul and he said, can you play this? And he played like 8 notes of a G chord and a B7 and then aim the chords to Another Day. And I thought he was joking. Like I remember going, Paul, I'm a studio musician. I think I can do that. I remember sort of being like a little bit like, why is he asking me this? And it wound up being Just Another Day. He said, because can you do it with me? We do it together. We'll double each other. I said, yeah,
Right.
of course I can do that. And it wound up being Just Another Day. It's just me, him, and Danny Sywell. There's just three. I think we overdubbed 6 acoustic guitars, and then I did the electric guitar fills afterwards. But it's just 3 pieces really with a lot of overdubs. But that was the first song I recorded with him. But I thought he was actually kidding me when he said, "Can you play
Right.
Jing 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 Jing?" I'm like, "Can I play that? I hope so."
I can
Right.
play West Montgomery. Are you kidding me?
Can you play Unit 7?
Yeah.
Right. I had heard the story you told about him not playing bass
No.
at all during those sessions while you guys were there, and I just thought that was a very unique
It was
thing to do in the studio.
It was just us, him and I going jing 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 jing,
Yeah.
and Danny Sywell playing drums. No bass. And my least favorite thing is to record with no bass. I rely on bass and drums when I come up with a guitar part. Like I like to fall somewhere in between the bass and drums. So here I am working with McCartney, and I'm saying to myself, "Oh my God, we're just playing these acoustic guitars and drums." It felt so strange. Although the record sounds great, when he put the bass part on, it made sense, but I never heard it till the record came out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or in the Beatle days, he did that. Certainly on Sergeant Pepper.
right.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
You guys know more about the Beatles than I do. I didn't even know.
Yeah, the one that I really one of the tracks that is the hidden track for "You Are Here," which is about a 10-minute track. And Dave, I don't know if you remember it, but I mean, all throughout those 10 minutes, it sounds like you're really just finding, your part in that song. And I gotta tell you, I'm been blown away with your performance in that song.
Which song? I'm sorry, which song is this?
You are here. It has more of that Caribbean feel. See, and that's
I don't
you
even.
know,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's amazing
yeah,
to us, but
yeah,
that's the way it is.
right,
Now,
yeah,
three legs I remember. People ask me how I got
yeah,
that sound on the acoustic. What I did was on 3 legs, I fingered the guitar part acoustic, but I played the guitar with a drumstick. That's why
oh
it's
wow,
percussion. I fingered it, but I played the part with a drum
right,
while I fingered the chords. And that
oh wow,
Paul kind of dug that because it was unique, and that's why 3 legs sounds like that. I'm actually not playing
right,
with the pick with my fingers. I'm drumming with the drumstick.
right. Do you guys ever get like a little frustrated at all when you're? I mean, I think you both can say that you read and write music. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I mean, I mean, is it a challenge to work with somebody then that doesn't like a John or a Paul, and then you're just following what they're humming
Um,
to you?
no, it's just sort of a different. It's like a different skill. Sorry about my phone ringing. It's just a
Oh,
different skill. It's just a different skill. You just go along with it. We came up playing in bands too. I mean, I played in rock bands. We didn't
right.
write anything out. But once I thought I was going to be a professional musician, I thought I better get my reading chops up because it's just another skill to have. But
Yeah, I
Mhm.
feel the same way. I feel I mean, I played in rock and roll bands when I was a teenager. So,
yeah,
and I don't remember anybody in that band reading music or anything. We just played the hits of the day. That's how we got work.
right, right.
We got hired for high school dances, but we had to sort of imitate
Yeah,
whatever record we were.
yeah, like a cover band,
doing.
like a cover band. So I did
Right.
that, but I was also studying music theory in high school. I had a really
Yeah.
good music theory teacher. Then I studied orchestration with a Russian lady and classical guitar because I was trying to educate myself. I was trying to keep one step ahead when they found out that I didn't read as good as they thought I could. I was always worried about the one session where I was going to have to say, "I'm sorry, I can't read that. Can you get somebody else?" It never
Right.
happened, but I lived in fear of that my whole career.
David and I have
Wow.
we have a very similar backgrounds in that way. We've studied classical music, and we exposed ourselves to all kinds of different music, and then became studio musicians. So all of it's helpful. Um, but being a musician, you always think of what what can I do to get better? And I'm still practicing. I still, it's not like I'm practicing 8 hours a day, but if I can't practice, during the day, sometime I get a little edgy, so to speak, inside myself. It's just that feeling of if a jogger can't jog, it's frustrating to not be able to run. And I
Right,
feel that way
right.
about not playing the piano. And I try to tell myself after all these years, why am I still feeling that way? I should be more mature and older and not feel that way. But it's part of my being, to go to the
Right.
piano and play.
I got one last question for you too. Have you guys ever been asked to join any like the Beatle fests or conventions that are held, over the course of a couple? I mean, there's two. There's the Fest for Beatle fans twice a year. Then there's the Beatles Week in Liverpool. Have you guys ever been asked to participate,
Uh,
or would
I
you?
I have I have, and honest, not to be snobby or anything. I don't really like those kind of things. So
Okay. Hmm.
I have, and I just have politely said no, thank you. I'd honestly rather be home.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's fair enough.
I've been asked to do something. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't in England. Get together, and part of the fact that occurs to me, and David can agree with me or not, but part of it is, this music we played 50 years ago at least,
Hmm.
with Ram even a little bit longer. And it's not like we're walking around with these. I mean, the memory of the songs, it would probably come back to me quickly to go back and play the songs from Mind Games. But in part of my mind says to me, you're going to have to relearn these songs. It's not
Hmm.
to go back 50 years and remember what I played
Yeah.
without, my tendency would be to sit down and take dictation off the record. And if nobody else had done that already, I would have to do that myself and just remind myself and listen to it a lot again to get it as perfect as I wanted it to be to match that record. And
Mm.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
that's to me that's a bit I don't want to use the word intimidating, but I'm going to use it. A lot of work. That's a lot of work
Right.
to go back and do that.
Yeah, and like
Mm.
like you said, so much of that stuff was spontaneous. Like it was spontaneous. I mean, one time I did a solo on the Dr. John record. I played the solo on the Right Time Wrong Place, and I'd go
Hmm.
cover bands. I walk into a restaurant, and every guitar player can play it note for note. I can't play it note for note. I played it once, and my worst fear is to go back and have to relearn something I played spontaneously and try to make it
Mm.
sound like it's spontaneous again. It makes me feel like this like somewhat of a liar. It's like I'm not telling the true story, because the true story
Right.
is it only happens once. The truth is it only happens once, and when you try to do
Yeah.
it again, you just come out, you sound like you're covering yourself. It's kind of bizarre. It's like faking an orgasm or something.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, Ken, back to you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tom.
Good
I got to
way.
follow that. Haven't you told the story, David, that with Right Place, Wrong Time, you
Yeah.
were in the studio and you didn't hear any part of the song other than
No,
the part where you had to do the solo, so you didn't even know how the song went.
I never heard the song. I never heard the song until it was in the
Wow.
radio, because I was on my way to a jingle date. I was at Atlantic Records. They were mixing Right Time Wrong Place, and it was supposed to be a sax solo. It was supposed to be Fathead Newman, who did a lot of solos for Reeve Martin. It was supposed to be Fathead, but when they were mixing the record, and then it dawned on them when they got to the solo that there wasn't a solo. So I'm in the hallway leaving like an Aretha Franklin session on my way to a jingle session. I have 20 minutes to get to a 2 o'clock date. I was like 1 o'clock, 10 to 1. I did my 10 to 1. It's 1:20. I got to get a cab to another session to do a jingle session. So
Mm.
Dr. John sees me in the hall. He says, "Could you just come in here quick and throw a little blues solo on this record?" I said, "Man, I got like literally 10 minutes. So just come in. We got a little Fender amp with Mike the amp. It was in the mix room. It wasn't the big room, but they had a little Fender amp, and I plugged in the amp. They rolled it to 2 bars before the solo. He goes, "It's an E flat. Just play the blues." And I play that solo. And then I think one of the things is out of tune. They go, "Oh, I know I said I'm in a rush, but let me try it again." And they go, "No." It was magic. Get out of here. I said, no, I think I could do one more. They said, no, you said you were in a rush. Get the hell out. And they threw me out. 6 months later, I heard it on the radio, and I realized it was me.
That's beautiful. That's a
Wow.
beautiful story.
It was one shot. Never heard the song till I heard it in the taxi cab. And the taxi cab driver, great New York story, stops. He goes, "Oh, you're a guitar player." I'm in the back of the cab with 3 guitars. He goes, "You're gonna love this. This is my new favorite solo." And it comes on, and knee-jerk reaction because I go, "Holy shit, that's me." He goes, "Yeah, right, buddy." And he turned it off. True story.
Something.
I didn't even get there, so I had to go to like Colony Records, and I bought the record, and I heard the record. So that's a solo I played.
Don't they
I
ever?
think they should make it. I think they should make it a rule to where if you play on the record, you don't have to buy it. They just give you a copy.
Yeah, I bought it. Yeah, isn't that wild?
Didn't they tell you at all when the record was coming out? And
No, back in those days, you didn't. If you were the studio guy, you didn't necessarily. If you were the producer, you might get a record. But the studio guys, they didn't send us records, and sometimes we didn't get credited for a long time on records. You know, there's things I played out that probably I don't even know that they don't even know, or that Kenny did, or whatever. You know, the crediting stuff started later, even. So
Jeez.
no one ever sent me a record. I bought the record so I could hear it. I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know anything about it. I never heard him sing it on it. I just played the solo and left. There was no sing. I just heard that 8 bars or 16 bars, whatever it was. And that was it. Then I played it once. I thought my G string was out of tune. I wanted to try it again. And I felt like I overbent this note that to this day, when I hear it, it drives me crazy. But everybody says, oh, that was the magic.
Yeah.
So, one person's magic is another person's mistake. I don't know.
yeah, that's got to be something if you know what to play when you haven't heard the rest of the song at all.
I didn't hear it. I just heard 4 bars before it, leading into it. And then it was like he pointed to me and said, play some blues.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we've lost Kenny. We
No,
hope.
he's coming back.
Mm.
He's coming back right now.
Oh,
Here he
so
comes.
anyway, it was a strange. I mean, I've told the story a million times, but it's such a New York story too, to have the taxi driver go, "Yeah, right, buddy," and not even let me hear it. Yeah, that was
Can
you.
can you talk a second about being critical about yourself? I mean, is it tough for you to always listen to yourself
Yeah,
over
oh,
again,
God.
or
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the way I hear some actors talk, they don't go see their own movies. It's just,
right?
it's like I know, you're playing well, and what happens is I usually hear what I would have played. Like, oh, gee, I must have had another chance, or I would have done this or would have done. So, I just wanted to be so critical of myself. It really has to be years later that I can listen when I forget what it was I thought I should have played. And now I can just listen to it as if it's fresh. But when you're playing, you're so self-conscious of what you're playing.
Right.
Playing. And and when there's producers, sometimes they choose a take that maybe you thought you played better on something else. So it's it's like it's not always what you thought it was your best. And they take it just like like the Dr. John solo. Now apparently people like that solo because I go into clubs. Every time I go into a club and never hear that solo, some guitar player plays it note for note. I thought I could have done it better, but that's what worked out. That's what got on the record.
Wow.
Let me ask you, I know in the Mind Games book, we've discussed this here on the show. John said that 5 of the songs were already written. So the remainder of the album, it actually says.
Huh, I didn't know that.
This is his actual quote. I've never got the lyrics done until I sing them, so I don't count them as finished. The completed ones, he says, were Mind Games, Only People, I Assume Ascend, Bring on the Lucy, and I Know. The rest all came in the week before the start of the recording. So I wanted to know if it's more of a challenge to work on these songs, the remainder of the album when he didn't finish the lyrics.
Wow.
They're like, because you have a deadline probably, you're probably just given a week to do the
We
recording.
did the tracks pretty quick. I think we did
Yeah.
the tracks in a week. Unlike Keltner, I heard Keltner say during his interview that he listens to the lyric and tries to work off the lyric. I
Yeah.
have to say, I don't really listen to the lyric later, like especially when there's no charts, like there were no charts. So what happened was I was busy trying to learn the chord structure and the structure of the song that I really honestly didn't pay attention to the lyric. So I wouldn't even know the difference between his, let's say, dummy lyric and when he
Yeah.
completed the lyric. for me, I didn't work off the lyrics. I worked off the chords and the vibe. Is it reggae? Is it rock? Is it a shuffle? Is it I would be learning more like the structure of the song, not paying attention to every lyric. So for me, it didn't matter whether it was fully written or half written. He could have been humming, and I would say, okay, that's the melody. So how do I stay out of the way of the melody? To me, I was listening more about the whole overall structure, not the lyric per se.
Right.
Keltner said he goes by the lyric, that's how he runs. But everybody runs different.
Well, I've heard it said, and now it's twice I've heard this. In the case of the Imagine album, John wanted the musicians to know the lyrics first and know what the songs are about.
Wow.
And what did I just read?
Well, I could see that for How Do You Sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it may affect the way that they play. Just knowing.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's not where I would come from initially listening to a song. I'm just hearing the melody and the feel and what am I going to play to not get in the way of the melody? What's going to be a nice supportive thing? Whether he's singing about his girlfriend or about a flower.
Yeah.
To me, it didn't matter at the outset.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, what you played at the end of I Assume Ascend suited the whole song and the lyrics and the, professional approach of.
Yeah, but it was a happy accident,
Okay.
Did you?
Go ahead.
No, I was saying, had you known Sneaky Pete prior to working on
No.
Mind Games?
No, and the weirdest thing is I don't even remember meeting him. I don't think I was ever in the studio with him at the same time. I think
Yeah, because I think he did it. Yeah, I think his work was after.
Yeah. I don't even remember although there's that picture of all of us in front of the bitter end. I don't even remember taking that picture. And Sneaky Pete's in that picture. I'm in it. Yoko's in it. Rick Marotta, I don't even remember that picture. So honestly, I don't even remember meeting Sneaky Pete. I knew his name. I knew who he was. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't a New Yorker. So I saw Kenny Ascher 5 days a week. I saw Rick Marotta 5 days a week. I saw Gordon Edwards 5 days a week. I didn't see Keltner other than that record. And I didn't see Sneaky Pete. I don't remember meeting him ever. How weird is that?
It's very sneaky.
Yeah, very sneaky.
He's so sneaky. I never met him. I'll tell you one thing though. What a hell of a player. What a unique.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The playing.
Really
I'm saying to myself, gee, I wish I knew the guy. I didn't know I played with him.
We have just had such a great time talking with you both. And so just to sum up, what are, just looking back, 50 years on, looking back on Mind Games, what really stays with you both about that whole experience? What do you carry with you from that whole time working with John Lennon? So, Ken, why don't we start with you?
The first thing that when you were talking just now, the first thing that hit me was John's voice for some reason. The humanity, the person. I don't know how to describe it. The sound of his voice, coupled with the lyrics and the melodies and the chords and everything. That's what I come away with. And actually, even though, like David and I were saying, I don't necessarily spend a lot of time listening after I finish recording. The experience that we've had on this anniversary has been like it's like putting gas in a car or something. It's like my life has changed. I'm older now, and I'm not.
Hello.
I'm not doing.
Yep.
I'm not doing.
Yep, we hear you.
He's coming back.
He's coming back.
So anyway, I guess I feel like it's been very flattering to be a part of this whole thing, including this interview. It's been a lot of fun for me and sharing some of this stuff. Tomorrow morning I'll wake up and I'll be a little bit of inspiration happening, but I'll go back and start living my present life. I'll practice a little bit and then carry around a little bit of this with me, because it's nice. This is a very nice thing to experience, this whole thing, the feeling of 50 years ago, and then reliving some of it in an emotional way, and certainly thinking about John himself. And it's the same thing that happened to me when I was doing the interview with Simon. It's just the combination of the sound of John's voice and it's the one of the Beatles sounds. As a matter of fact, it seemed to me when I heard, I believe it was "I Want to Hold Your Hand." I don't think I'd ever noticed how much out front John's voice is. It seems like I'm hearing him louder than Paul on that record, and I never even stopped to think about that stuff before so much. It was just the overall effect of the records on me, and now, of course, I'm very aware of the sound of John's voice.
Absolutely. David, how about you? What is
Well, yeah, for me, I have to say, I was never much of a nostalgia person. I was always, looking forward to whatever, like I said, and like Kenny, whenever I played on stuff, I really didn't go run home and put it on and listen to myself over and over again. But when I saw this package, when I talked to Simon, it came back to me. But when I saw the package and we went to that thing and Adobe and actually heard it in this theater, and I saw the way they treated us, not like sidemen, but like we were part of the band, I felt very honored.
Yeah.
And I've never felt like that on anything else I played on, because honestly, I was never honored in that way on a record. I was just always a sideman, and I always considered myself a sideman, other than my own solo records or something I was producing. So I was just honored, even though I never thought about it. And I thought, now, if you really look at it, wow, the Beatles, I'm part of that little history. I got a little piece of it. I'm not Eric Clapton, I'm not Billy Preston, I'm not whatever. But I thought, wow, this is really an honor, and it thrilled me that I got to be part of it. I never would have dreamed, that I would be part of something like this.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think can we hear you? Can you there?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean Ken Michaels.
Ken Michaels. Yeah.
Ken Michaels, you okay? Are you ready? Oh, technology is not on our side today.
So bizarre.
It was so good. It was worked perfect.
It was going so well.
Well,
well, we really appreciate you guys coming on here. This was a complete honor. I mean, a really big honor to have both of you, and we want to thank Ken Michaels for making this happen for sure. And David, Ken, Ascher. I mean, you guys are both brilliant musicians. And there's other works out there. Do you guys have anything to plug right now? I mean, is there any concerts or any writings you guys are doing? But David, you said you got that Beatles Big Band thing coming soon.
Yeah, we're trying.
Ken, anything in the works for you?
I just, I've got a gig on Friday evenings. If you guys are in the city, I play with the Jazz Big Band at Birdland from 5:30 to 7. My life, I'm sort of retired now, although it's hard for me to say that because I think, I guess is the word, is I'm selectively retired. And I like to do things with people I want to do them with the musicians I want to play with, and the people I want to be with. I'm not necessarily wanting to do every gig that comes along, but at the same time, most of the gigs, or many of them, I do want to do. But it's like I'm not doing everything, but I do that, and I occasionally play for singers. I love to play for good singers, so that's that's my life is a bit different than it used to be. The
right
12-hour a day recording days, and that doesn't seem to be happening so much anymore.
Right. And David, you talked about the Beatles Big Band project. When do you think we can maybe see that?
Yeah, I'm hoping right now we're slotted for November 17th, 2:00 at the Cutting Room. It'll be like a 16, 17 band. It's a full big band, 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 5 sax, guitar, bass, drums, and guitar. I'm not even playing guitar. I'm just conducting because there's a lot of stuff I have to do. 2 people that I'm not playing.
Right.
I have a guitarist and a bass player and a drummer, and Kenny's playing piano, and I just did all the arrangements, and I'll be conducting the band. It looks like, so far, it looks like November 17th, but I'll keep you posted.
Yes, please do.
Excellent.
All right. And we'll keep everybody else posted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, special thanks to David Spinozza and Kenny Ascher for being our special guests. I do apologize. We had some technical problems where I lost my way. I don't know what happened here. These things do happen. Maybe Magic Alex is somewhere. His spirit is trying to interfere with this show. But such great guests and really great guys. And thanks for sharing your memories of mind games and everything else. And I had a lot of questions about Paul Williams. I wanted to get to
Next time, next
talk
time.
to them, Tom. But
Yeah.
yeah. So we do have the latest Beatle news to get to. And as you know, because of the Fest for Beatle fans and all, we haven't had a news show with all of us here with a news update for quite a while. So quite a lot has accumulated, but I'll try to keep this concise, but a lot of it's really important. First of all, getting a lot of attention in the past few weeks is a new documentary that you've heard about called One to One, John and Yoko, which premiered at the Venice Film Festival last weekend and also played at the Telluride Film Festival as well. Directed by Kevin McDonald, the project follows John and Yoko during the first year and a half when they moved into New York City. It features archival footage of interviews and phone calls combined with concert and archival footage. And there's no information yet about whether or not it's going to be in movie theaters, but pretty soon we should be hearing something. Ringo Starr just started his fall tour with the All-Stars in the United States. A total of 12 dates running from September 7th through the 25th. And a new press release says, look for details on Ringo's forthcoming country album in October. So pretty soon we'll be hearing something. And we hear that Edgar Winter is not in the band at the moment, and Buck Johnson, who has played with Aerosmith on tour, is going to be replacing Edgar. Okay. Congrats to our colleague and friend Ken Womack for receiving the McCann Book Award for his biography, Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans, which has won the Music Book of the Year award. And Ken was presented with the award during Beatles Week in Liverpool during the August bank holiday. In response, Ken says, I am truly humbled by the team at McCann's selection of Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans as Music Book of the Year. Sharing this story would simply not have been possible without the warmth, goodwill, and support of Gary Evans and Julie Rousseau, Mal's children. Their courage and insistence on telling Mal's story, warts and all, demonstrates their unfailing approach to getting their father's life and times right. Thank you again for this important recognition. McCann, now in its third year, is a 3-day music industry networking event held at the beginning of June in Cannes, France, featuring conference panels, artist showcases, music documentary screenings, and other events. And special thanks to 910 PR for this information. Way to go, Ken.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're waiting for part 2 with Mal's diaries, coming out hopefully soon. I don't know if we have any information about that, but certainly I think before the end of the year.
Actually, I think it's been pushed to next year.
Really?
Yeah. Ken mentioned that it's going to be pushed to next year. I'm not sure when, but it'll be soon.
Yeah. We all know it'll be well worth the wait.
Yes, it will.
Like all of Ken's work.
Yes.
A brand new book comes out October the 1st called George Harrison, Within You, Without You, Listening to George Harrison by Seth Rogavoy. Within You, Without You is a highly personal exploration of George Harrison's essential contributions to the Beatles and his solo work, as well as his significant role as a Western proponent of Indian music and beliefs. Through close examination of his guitar playing in the Fab Four and his songwriting both in and out of the Beatles, author Seth Rogavoy demystifies the enigma of this most reluctant of rock stars. Drawing upon the insights of the author, who's a rock critic and historian of over 40 years standing, as well as those of expert observers, including Beatles filmmaker Michael Lindsay Hogg and English rock singer-songwriters Robin Hitchcock and John Wesley Harding, among others. This book extensively examines George Harrison's contributions to the musical world. Within You, Without You will forever change the way readers hear the music of the Beatles and view Harrison's role in the group, as well as enhancing appreciation of Harrison as a cultural figure above and beyond his work as a musician. Special thanks to John Bazzini and Patrick Humphreys, who is the author of the new Beatles book, With the Beatles, for that information. Another book that's a nice surprise coming out is called Dip My Brain in Joy, My Life with Neil Innes. This is
Hmm.
by Yvonne Innes, Neil's wife. It's due out October the 24th and is described as the official biography covering Neil's career with the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, Monty Python, and the Ruddles. That should be a fun read. A new book just released is called The Beatles, The White Album, Rock Classics by Ofer Goodwin. That's released on paperback. It's all the stories behind all the songs on the White Album. Apparently, Paul McCartney had a big part in talking both Liam and Noel Gallagher into reuniting Oasis. Paul
Of
has
course.
talked both. What's that?
I said, of course. It's a private joke between me and Tom. Paul does everything, including getting back Oasis together.
Now, can you get ABBA back together again? Stop all this teasing, with ABBA. Get them back together. Paul has talked to both the brothers and told them they would regret not getting back together while they still have the ability and means to pull it off. Paul also spoke about the fact that he has lived to regret that the Beatles never got back together for one last hurrah before John Lennon was killed.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
A special tour about to take place, and this has been happening for several years now. It's called It Was 50 Years Ago Today. You might recall that a few years ago there was a star-studded band who played their own hits. It was half their own hits, half Beatles songs. And this happens every few years honoring Beatles albums. And the last time we had this, Christopher Cross was in the band,
Oh,
Joey
yeah.
Molland.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Denny Lane was actually in the band the last time. Mickey Dolenz and Jason Sheff. Well, some of those same musicians are in the new lineup, and they include Christopher Cross, Joey Molland, Jason Sheff, Maxie Priest, and they just added David Pack from Ambrosia, replacing originally there was going to be Glenn Shorrock from the Little River Band. They're going to be playing songs from the Let It Be album and the Hey Jude album. Interesting that they're taking a look at an American album there.
The
and
best one.
What's that?
Said the best one.
Hey Jude is the best one. No, the Beatles story is the best one. If you want to find out more information, you can look up their website for all their dates. It's called It Was 50 Years Ago Today.com, and make sure you type in the number 50. Tickets have already gone on sale for that. The new movie, A Minecraft, described as an American adventure movie based on the 2011 video game, is due out next year, and a teaser for the film includes the Beatles' own recording of Magical Mystery Tour. The film stars Jason Momoa, Emma Myers, and Jack Black. Thanks to Kevin Martin for that information. All these contributors, all of our viewers to the show. Now, there will be a Beatles festival in Charlotte, North Carolina on October the 4th and 5th. They may be calling it Kit Fest, I heard. They might be changing the whole name.
Yep.
I happen to have spotted this from your Facebook post there.
That's right.
There will be performances October 4th by the Tosco Beatles Music Tribute and October 5th by Live and Let Die, the music of Paul McCartney. And Tony Kishman plays the role of Paul, and I have seen a lot of his stuff online. It's really good. And actually, John Murjavi, who's in the Weaklings and is also in Liverpool, the Beatles tribute band at the Fest for Beatles fans, he's been in that band. So it's a really great guitarist, John is. There'll also be a Beatles art contest, Beatles cover song contest, yoga, and a presentation from our own Kid O'Toole. For more information, you can visit fabfestcharlotte.org. Want to say anything about your upcoming appearance there?
Yes, really looking forward to it. This was my first time there. I'm going to be giving a presentation on the top 10 Beatles sounds that shook the world. And yeah, really excited about it. You're going to have to come and find out what those top 10 sounds are. And also Bruce Spicer is going to be there.
Okay.
Greg Bissonette, I think he's going to give a drum clinic. and it's going to be a really good time. So come on down and check it out.
No David Spinozza or Ken Ascher?
No, unfortunately not. I wish.
Oh, well.
All right.
And
Yeah.
Gary Burr,
Oh,
a
oh.
friend of ours, he'll be there too.
I'm making a note of all of this because it's not on the website.
I know. I don't know why it's not up there yet, but I think it will be sometime this week, maybe early next.
Okay,
Mhm.
very
Yep.
good.
Mhm.
Okay. Other documentary news. Elton John has a new documentary film on his life called Never Too Late, which captures him in his heyday in the 70s in the most revealing way, they say. Leading up to his farewell concert at Dodger Stadium in 2022. And they cover Elton's relationship with John Lennon and one moment when they are partying with, quote, mountains of coke.
As
When
we
a
all
knock
do.
came on their hotel door, a knock came on the hotel door and it was Andy Warhol. They wouldn't let him in because he always carried a Polaroid camera and they didn't want their use of drugs to be captured. The documentary is due to be aired on Disney Plus in December.
Oh, perfect place for that kind of thing.
Good at family fun.
Maybe they'll edit that part out. I don't know.
Fits right into that.
Mountains of Coke, Disney Plus. I mean, what better combination can you think of?
And they'll have Coca-Cola advertised.
It's getting really good reviews, actually, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Another new documentary coming out is on Paul Anka. It's called Paul Anka My Way, which just premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. In it, he tells the story how he never heard of the Beatles until he saw them perform in France. When they were announced as the Beatles, he said, "Beatles? What the hell is that?" He noticed that they played artists from the 50s that he had worked with, like Fats Domino and Chuck Berry, and that they were totally influenced by American blues. He told his agent about the Beatles. Anka's agent happened to be Sid Bernstein. Anka is quoted as saying, "When they came over, I realized things were changing. I realized that if I didn't change with it, I wasn't going to survive. And I just started really laying into my writing, trying to reinvent myself, knowing I'd be left behind if I didn't." Actually, from the very beginning, Paul Anka was a songwriter, but when the Beatles took over, he concentrated more on his songwriting. It's another effect the Beatles had on American artists here. Neil Sedaka did the same thing. Some major passings to note here. The great bassist, Herbie Flowers, has died at the age of 86. He played bass on Paul's great ballad of No More Lonely Nights. And also from Give My Regards to Broad Street from the album, Paul's version of The Long and Winding Road. He played on Ringo's Stop and Smell the Roses album on the songs Rack My Brain and You Belong to Me, both the George Harrison tracks there. He shares bass work and is listed for tuba on, actually he plays tuba on Rack My Brain. There's a special mix too that came out in Canada, which you can hear the tuba a little bit more on there. But he also plays bass and he's listed on tuba on George Harrison's Somewhere in England album. He also shares bass on the Gon Troppo album. He's also known for a lot of his session work, and you can hear him on Space Oddity from David Bowie, the very familiar bass line on Walk on the Wild Side from Lou Reed, and
It might be one of the top 5 most iconic bass lines of all time, I think.
yeah,
Absolutely.
the song revolves around it.
Yeah. Yep.
He also played on Rock On from David Essex,
Mm,
Harry Nilsson's Jump into the Fire.
yeah.
Also, there's the passing of Sergio Mendes. What a big name right there. Considered a Brazilian bossa nova legend. He died on September the 5th after a long battle with COVID. And he covered a lot of Beatles songs, including Day Tripper with A Little Help from My Friends. He had a #6 hit in the US with The Fool on the Hill, which is one of my favorite covers of all Beatles songs right there.
I love that cover.
Also covered Norwegian Wood and Here Comes the Sun. Very sad to hear about that. It was a huge part of the 60s, especially with Brazil 66.
Oh yeah.
He had a great big comeback. Was it the late '80s with "Never Gonna Let You Go"?
Yes.
Fantastic song.
Great song.
Yeah.
And also, this is a few weeks ago now, but Phil Donahue passed away, legendary talk show host. Ringo Starr appeared on his show twice. In 1981, he was there with Barbara Bach to promote Caveman. And in 1995, he was really there to promote the All-Star Band's tour of the time. It was the third All-Star Band tour. But you can imagine from the audience, he got a lot of Beatle questions. Max Weinberg was on the show at the same time. He came on there to talk about how much of an influence Ringo has been on him for his drumming and for the rock world and the music world. And they did take questions from the audience. And you can actually watch this show on YouTube. And among the people in the audience who was there that asked him a question was me.
Yep.
Yes, and a
So-
very good question.
Yeah. And I actually, I can't believe it's almost 30 years ago that happened. But
Wow.
I was very happy about the fact that I said to him that Time Takes Time was one of his best albums, and people in the audience were applauding that.
I was too.
Cool.
That's what I liked when you said that.
Yeah.
I'm glad he knew that.
Yeah.
By the way, Ken, I just want to say he was on at least 3 times because he was on in 1978 for his Bad Boy album. Same arrangement, audience questions, and things like that. I have,
Okay. Thank
it's
you.
a good, it's very worthwhile. He looks great in that.
Okay. Yeah, because he did a lot of interviews for Bad Boy. Mike Douglas.
Well, the
And-
Ringo Starr show, I guess you could say too.
Yeah.
The Ringo special,
Yeah. Right. Okay. So yeah, and also Charles Rosenay asked him a question. Tom Frangione asked him a question. A lot of our crowd is there in
Wow.
audience for that show from 1995. So some major passings right there. Just want to close with a few reminders here. Julian Lennon's new photo book, Life's Fragile Moments, was due to be released yesterday. And this is the era of theatrical showings here. We have One Hand Clapping, which will be in theaters September the 26th, and some theaters are actually going to run it for more than a day. Daytime Revolution, which was when John and Yoko co-hosted the Mike Douglas show, that will be in theaters on October the 9th on John's birthday. And so I've heard the movie on Brian Epstein, Midas Man, will be in theaters on October the 10th. So we still have to wait to hear about One to One, John and Yoko One to One, Elton John, if that's going to be in theaters, or Paul Anka. Who knows how that's going to be shown. But with Elton John, I did say Disney Plus. Okay, so that's all the news that we have from the last several weeks here. All right, so why don't we go around the horn here and let everyone know what we've been up to. We'll start with Joe.
It seems like it's been a long time since I talked about it, but
Yeah.
all I can say is over at my YouTube, am I coming out? Okay, good. I don't know if the sound was
Yeah.
coming on.
Yeah.
YouTube channel that I have, Mean Mr. Mayo. You might not have seen my Beatle Fest related stuff. I did some Beatle Fest videos about Fest. I keep calling it Beatle Fest, Kit. Here I go again. A fest
know.
for Beatles fans.
We still
It'll
call
always
it
be
Beatle Fest. We're old school.
That's for Beatles fans in
Cares?
Chicago last month of August. And you could see some videos of me, just hanging around there. And of course, there's videos, some panels that I did with the. You got Kit and Tom also on the Talk More Talk panel. Ken couldn't make it, and also I got together again with Mikey Arugula. He's the crazy zany collector that shows all this rare Beatles stuff. I did another video where we go to his place and he shows us his new feature being Back to School Beatles, and it's about like all kinds of things, collectibles related to back to school, stuff with Beatles from the 60s, all kinds of stuff, which you could imagine what that is. Then I have a new name for my movie channel. It is now called Mr. Cinemayo. Get it? Cinema with Mayo at the end. Mr. Cinemayo. And Tom and I just did a live stream there talking about movies. And let's see, I put a couple of new movie items up too, or at least one. reviews of movies. So check those channels out, Mr. Cinemayo and Mean Mr. Mayo.
Yeah, since you mentioned the fest, I watched the Rack Our Brains
Oh
show
yeah, yes.
there, and a big thank you to Ken Womack for asking that question about what albums I got wrong.
That's right.
Thank you,
Forgot
Ken.
about.
I appreciate that, buddy.
I totally did. I didn't think of that when you said it.
I forgot
And
about that.
I appreciated how the three of you defended me.
Mm,
I was
But
still
I'm not
taken
hurt.
off guard.
Everything just bounced.
yeah.
Tom, you're next.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Well, yes, at the Fest for Beatles fans, Andy and myself, we did a presentation on the reevaluation of Give My Regards to Broad Street film for its 40th anniversary. We had the great pleasure of going up against Peter Jackson and Michael Lindsay Hogg. Can you believe that? It was such great fun being pitted against those two. But no, seriously. But when that was over, then our room filled up, which was nice, and we got a lot of great feedback for that presentation. And obviously, it was great fun doing the Rack Our Brains panel with Joe and Queen and Ken. Who shame on you for saying that about Ken Michaels. Shame, shame,
Why say
shame.
that now? You didn't say it over there in front of the crowd there.
Yes, you're right.
You didn't defend Flower
um,
Dirt. You didn't defend Preston.
right.
Nothing.
No, 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 no. I guess you had to have been there.
Yes.
But,
Should have been there.
Should have
yeah.
been there. That's right.
Right. We are one of our last episodes where it was about a new book called Maka or Bacca in the Long Naughties by Ian Derbyshire. We had him on. We had a great chat with him. We just did a video that will be up this Saturday, which was a response to our friend Billy Tone's video where he ranked his favorite 20 favorite Maca B-sides. So we did a response to that, and that'll be up this Saturday. We are fortunate enough to receive the new book by John Blaney called 1973, The Last Year the Beatles Were Fab. This book comes out in November 1st. Ken, I think you might like this one. I mean, it's
Like
with
the title,
it's
Ken?
about the
It's the greatest year, but it wasn't the last year.
yes. I tend to agree with you. But yeah, we're looking forward to digging into this and having John back on the show. So be on the lookout for that. So obviously we got a lot of great stuff coming up. We're gonna hopefully get the part 3 of our look at the Paul and George relationship with our friend Owen Ling. Hopefully that coming up this month. And we always got stuff going on. Andy's been doing a lot of live shows on his own, and I've been trying to do more on my own as well. So just check out our channel. Go to YouTube, type in Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, and please subscribe. As well as coming over, if you're new here to Talk More Talk, please, you're checking us out. Please subscribe to this channel as well, and all of our channels, everything we do. Please do. If you got a comment or suggestion, go over to twolegspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to hear from you. And other than that, that's what's going on in the two legs world right now.
Okay. No one's doing more out there in the Beatle universe than Tom.
But you.
No, that's not true. No, I'm taking a back seat these days. Kit,
Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, you can find us here at Talk More Talk right on this channel. And please hit that subscribe button. We are so close to 2,000. We are getting so
Yep.
close. So please hit that subscribe button, and you'll be notified of all of our future episodes. And we've got some great ones coming up. You can, of course, find us on Facebook. If you hit the like button there, you'll be notified also of all our future episodes, and we post stuff up there all the time. You can find us on Twitter, Talk More Talk 1, the number 1, or X, or whatever it's called now. I still call it Twitter. I don't care. And you can also find us, well, you can email us rather at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com. As Tom was saying about Two Legs, please send us any ideas you have if you about topics you might like to see in future episodes, feedback. We love hearing from you. You can also find us, in addition to YouTube, you can find us on virtually any podcasting platform you like if you prefer hearing the audio version. We thank you so much, since we haven't really talked since the fest. Thank you so much, those of you who came to see us live at Fest Beatles Fans back in August. We had a blast doing Rack Our Brains live. It was a lot of fun. And you can, of course, find that episode right on this channel. And you can also find 50% of us on another video we put up, which was the academic panel that Ken Womack and I co-moderated, which was a lot of fun. It was about the future of Beatles research. And so do check that out as well right here on this channel. As far as I go, as Ken mentioned earlier, I am going to be at Charlotte's Fab Fest, which is coming up October 4th through the 6th. And so if you want to find out more about that, you can go to fabfestcharlotte.org. Hope to see you there. I will be presenting on the 5th. So please do look me up there. I'll also have a table, and we'll be signing books there as well. And you can also check out new episodes of Toppermost of the Poppermost. Our August 1964 episodes are up. So you can find out what was going on the charts, both in terms of the Beatles and related artists. And our September 1964 episodes will be up very shortly. You can find us at toppermostofthepoppermost.net, so you can find all the episodes right there. So hope you'll check us out, and please give us a like on the platform of your choice, wherever you listen to the best podcasts. So I think that's everything there.
Okay. As for me, if you want to get in touch with me directly, my email address is everylittleThing@att.net. On my other talk show podcast called Things We Said Today, we did a review of Revival 69. That was the last show that we did, where we reviewed this new DVD, which is all about the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival show, with lots of 50s rock and roll artists, and of course, John and Yoko and the Plastic Ono Band. And we're due to do an interview tomorrow with Aaron Badgley. He is the author of this new book on Dark Horse Records. And I just finished reading it. It's everything you could possibly want to know about Dark Horse Records and the artists that were signed to it, George's involvement, or sometimes lack of involvement with certain artists, and what happened to each one of them. And it's really an excellent book. So we're going to delve deep into this book this week. On my own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, I did another interview with Gary Burr, who we just mentioned before. Of course, Gary from all the work he's done with Ringo in particular. He's had a long career in the country music field as a songwriter. He released this book, which is about an imaginary reunion of the Beatles in 1998 that they did for Linda McCartney's passing. And the world then, according to the book, John was not killed. So we talk a lot about this book now, and the different scenarios in the book, and what I liked about it in particular. It's a very clever idea, what he came up with. And this book is doing really well. And I think I showed the last time it comes with a ticket to see the Beatles for their concert in Central Park in 1998.
Oh, cool.
Cost $49.94. I don't know. And even Gary didn't know how he came up with that price. But yeah, really cool. And that's on Ken Michaels Radio. If you can, please subscribe to that. And my radio show, Every Little Thing, if you want to listen to it, you can listen on demand at WFDU's website. That's WFDU.FM. Type in the name Every Little Thing for their archival shows, and they have the last 2 weeks worth of shows in there. You can do that any time of the week. That's what it means to be on demand. So you don't have to just hunt the show down and find out every radio station that carries it and when they run it, although you can do that too. But that's the easy way to listen to Every Little Thing, WFDU.FM. And then there's my website, kenmichaelsradio.com. There's Beatles trivia every 2 weeks at the moment. Lots of amazing prizes to give away with every single Beatles contest. The latest game that I have there is the one called Scrambled Eggs, where you have to unscramble the title of a Beatle or solo Beatle song if you're good at that. And even if you don't know the song, you can figure it out if you're good at unscrambling. So check that out, kenmichaelsradio.com. Like Tom said, please subscribe to all of our channels. And this has been a lot of fun. And I can't thank David Spinozza and Kenny Ascher enough.
Yeah.
Tremendous guests. Imagine all the knowledge those two have from all the people they work with in the studio.
Unbelievable.
You know, a wealth of knowledge from the two of them. And it's such a great thing to share any time with them. I only hope we can spend more time with them in the future.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, great guys. So thanks so much to all of you for tuning in. And for Kit and Tom and Joe, I'm Ken Michael saying, wherever you are here.